Now, how would you describe playing a fiddle to somebody who's not very knowledgeable about that instrument? What kind of skills do you have to have, and is it a hard instrument in your opinion, an easy instrument?
I think it's easy to play, but it's hard to play well. It's just like
Okay.
anything else. The thing about playing the fiddle is that it's really important to have classical training, which is a big advantage that I've always had over so many of my, when I do fiddle contests, so many of my competitors aren't classically trained. So for me, it's always a great advantage to be classically trained.
What does the classical training do for you?
Well, when you have classical technique, it gives you so much more control over the sound. So you already have better tone, better sound quality, better clarity. I mean, just everything sounds better and even looks better.
What kind of music do you personally like best?
You mean classical or
Well,
fiddle?
just whatever the stuff you play. What do you like the best?
I get asked that a lot, actually, and I've always been hesitant to say one or the other because I think sometimes it depends on the day or the mood I'm in.
Well, what kind of categories do you play?
Well,
Bluegrass, is that one of them? And blues?
I really haven't messed around much with bluegrass, although I'm really interested in it, and I think it's definitely an option for me. I've never done much improv because I've been focused so much on classical that I haven't had as much time as I would like to, focus on, improving, which would, be very important in bluegrass music. So mostly I just play like old time fiddle, and I do a little bit of jazz, which I find a little more fun and gives me a chance to show off when I play. But as far as classical, I mean, that's pretty standard, so.
You're going to college, but you travel all over and you compete,
Yeah.
and you also perform. I mean, what's your life looking like right around now?
Crazy. Actually, it's sort of settling in now because it's getting into later fall. So the fiddle season is sort of over. So I can now concentrate more on classical. But I think the first couple months of school are the worst during the year because, I have school 5 days a week and then I'm home on the weekends for fiddle. So, and that doesn't leave me any time to practice. That's like driving and performing, going home, and I'm tired by the time I get home. Plus homework and, and practicing, it's just really crazy.
Now, with a fiddle, are you in competitions in state fairs around the state? Or, I mean, what is fiddle playing all about?
Well, some people will call me up and say, hey, can you play for, like, my birthday party or my wedding reception? Or, I mean, just anything. I'm sort of like when you want to hire me for a gig, I'm sort of like an all-occasion kind of person. And then we're in the circle. You have to be in the circle. Like, and when you go to enough contests, like, I've been going to contests since I was 6 years old, so I'm obviously in the circle. But when you go to enough of them, you sort of, like, you hear about, where they're all going to be, because the other people are like, hey, are you going to this contest next weekend or whatever, be like, oh, yeah, we're going to be there, sort of thing. So you get to hear where they are, and people will send out, I think they all share mailing lists, so they all, like, send out, emails and letters.
Okay, now you brought a phenomenal guitarist with you who actually makes guitars. Who's this fella?
Well, his name is Perry McKinley, and he is my guitar accompanist. I met him when I was about 6, and we started playing together when I was about 13.
You're not a newcomer to this game,
I'm not a newcomer to this game. I've been around a long time.
Well, I guess we're ready to hear the music, and looking forward to it.
Yahoo!
Hey everybody, this is Todd V with Arts Quest, and today we're at the Akron Civic Theater. We're going to check out this old theater, see some of the history, and also where it's going for the future. Stay tuned, you're not going to want to miss it. We're sitting here with Howard Power, Executive Director of the Akron Civic Theater, and we're going to find out about the history of this great institution. Howard.
Todd.
Thanks for taking time to sit with us today.
Glad to do it.
It's really a thrill to be here. This is probably one of the greatest jewels, I think, in Northeast Ohio. There's a name for this type of theater. What is this?
Well, it's an atmospheric design. I think that might be what you're thinking of.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
the stars and the clouds, the idea was that you felt like you were outside while you were inside.
And how many theaters are there like this still in existence in the United States?
You know, that number varies, but of this size, there's probably 5 or 6 total of this size. There's a fair number of them. The theater in Canton, the Palace Theater in Canton is one.
Okay.
That are smaller and have the same atmospheric kind of a design. But to have a theater that's nearly 2,500 seats and to have that kind of a design is fairly rare.
And how, actually, we jumped right into it. How old is the theater?
It opened in 1929, so this is our 80th anniversary season.
And tell me a little bit about who all have performed here over those years. I mean, what kind of historical...
You know, it's interesting because really the gamut of entertainers have performed here. And, of course, it was opened as a film palace. Mm-hmm. So the theater opened as the Lowe's Akron by the Lowe's Corporation, which is still in existence today primarily as a movie house.
Right, okay.
And obviously the stage is here and they had vaudeville in the building. But it was primarily a movie house, and it operated that way through the 50s and 60s. It didn't become a nonprofit until 1965, and that's when the Lowe's Corporation abandoned the building, and a group bought it and turned it into the Akron Civic Theater.
All right. Now, it's interesting as you actually enter the building, you go over one of the canals, or part
Correct.
of the canal.
Right. As you come in, there was actually a story recently on this. The entry arcade that you walk in was built 10 years before the rest of the theater. And it was supposed to be the entry for a theater called the Hippodrome. And the Hippodrome was not just a theater, but a whole entertainment complex with arcades, with retail and restaurants and bars, and then the theater. The financing for that project fell through. And the entryway just sat there for 10 years doing nothing. It just came from Main Street back. Then Marcus Lowe came into town, bought that entryway. They built a bridge across the canal, which ends up being our grand lobby. It's why we have a huge lobby as opposed to just going right from that arcade into the theater. And then the theater is on the other side of the canal, so that's how that works.
So the lobby actually is the part that's suspended over the canal.
It's a bridge over the canal. When you're standing on the lobby, you're 30 feet above the Ohio Erie Canal. There's nothing below you other than the concrete floor you're standing on.
And it's funny, I grew up in this area, and I had no idea until they started doing the renovation out back. I remember coming here all the time and just being impressed by the lobby, but you can actually see it now,
right?
The exposed area.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. When the